Hey, Matt, we are talking about Texas falling 30-15 to Georgia on Saturday. Slow starts have recently been an issue for Texas, but it never really cost them the game or anything as those opponents were not as strong. On Saturday, Georgia took full advantage of that. What do you think is causing these slow starts, and how does Texas overcome this?
Well, I don't know that it's necessarily the same thing that's happened in every game. I think every time it's been a little bit different. They started slow against Mississippi State, and I think that was just because Arch was making his first start and trying to get his feet under him, and that was kind of a different thing. And then against Oklahoma, I think Quinn was just a little rusty, and he was having kind of a hard time with getting used to the speed of the game again and getting those things, kind of under control. He eventually evened out there, and it worked out pretty well. This, I think, is kind of a totally different animal. I don't think that the slow starts are indicative of what happened on Saturday night whatsoever. I think that, kind of after going back and rewatching the game and kind of looking at a few different things, I really think you just have to give the credit to Georgia here for, kind of calling a masterful defensive game plan. The Georgia defensive coordinator was really just in his bag on Saturday night. It was a very uh, special play calling performance from him. He was doing all kinds of different things to confuse Ewers, and it was working. There's a couple plays that come to mind right off the bat where Georgia shows up in a three down front, and it looks like they're going to kind of play the pass, and then they motion and they switch into a double mug, and they've got all of a sudden they've got six guys coming in against five blockers and right before the snap. So the offensive line has to adjust very quickly to that. And it didn't work out. And that happened a few times. And there was a lot of other different things they did to kind of get pressure on Quinn. And they did a great job of slowing down the run and kind of taking that out of the game, which has been something Texas has relied on over the last few games. So I really just give the credit to Georgia there in this particular case. And I think that, come next Saturday against Vanderbilt, you're going to see Texas try to start a little bit faster. And I think they will.
So prior to Saturday, this O line was regarded as, if not the best, one of the best. They only allowed 6 sacks in 6 games, but Saturday was a completely different animal. They allowed seven, three of which resulted in fumbles. Can you talk about what went wrong with this O line?
Yeah, I think a lot of it just again comes down to Georgia. They got a guy back, Michael Williams, who is one of the best pass rushers in the country. He hadn't really played all season. He played a few snaps last week against Mississippi State, and then this week he comes back and he plays a full game. And when he's in the game, it's just a totally different animal for them, and they can throw a lot of different guys at you. I also think like I said, there's a few miscommunications along the offensive front. One of those sacks that resulted in a fumble in particular, Sark talked about it today in his press conference. Quinn thought he was protected on that side, and the running back was supposed to take that guy, and he just came free off the edge, and Quinn did not anticipate him being free coming off the edge, so he, was going about his business as usual, and at the last second, he kind of looked to his left, and he got smacked by the defensive ends, or I guess it was a defensive back. So it was just little things like that. And I think that they get those things ironed out this week, but it is kind of alarming because Texas was, like you said, regarded as arguably the best offensive line in the country. They've got two projected first round picks at the tackles. They've got other guys inside that are also projected to be in the NFL. And when you hang your hat on your offensive line and they kind of let you down like that, then that's definitely a blow to your confidence a little bit. So and Vanderbilt this coming weekend is as they showed against Alabama, they're capable of getting after the quarterback as well. So it'll be interesting to see what they do this week to kind of fix those issues. Maybe they bring another guy inside, like a tight end or an H back like Juan Davis a little bit more. But they've really got to get that fixed in a hurry for sure.
You mentioned this earlier, but the whole offense struggled. I think they were 2 of 14 on third down conversions, which is half of what they averaged in past games. They struggled with the ability to get points on turnovers. Do you think this is something Texas fans should be worried about? Or is this just more of a testament to Georgia just once again having a incredible defense?
I think it's a little bit of both. like you got to give all the credit to Georgia for how they played. Their backs were against the wall, and they came out and they did everything they were supposed to do to win that game, and they did it. Um, Texas, the issues with not scoring on the turnovers, I think, is what ended up being the biggest difference in the game overall. Because you get two interceptions early on Carson Beck, and you don't capitalize on any of those turnovers, and then the next thing you know, you're down 17-0, and that's got to be very deflating. Um, the two of 14 on third down, I think, is kind of an aberration because I think that there were opportunities there and they just didn't capitalize on them. They didn't execute well enough to get the chains moving. They're very comfortable in third and short. They're very comfortable in all the way out to third and six. They feel like Sark said today that they feel like that's their bread and butter. And I feel like going forward for the rest of the season, that's probably still going to be the case. But if it becomes a thing where it happens consistently, I would probably start to worry about it. But for right now, I think it's just really down to a lack of execution and Georgia really taking advantage of those situations.
So the second biggest thing to happen that night, which is kind of funny that it reached the second instead of the first, but Quinn Ewers was benched. Can you give your thoughts on that and how benching Ewers affects this Texas offense moving forward?
Yeah, I think this has kind of been blown out of proportion a little bit by the media at large. You know, it obviously was a very questionable decision. I didn't agree with it. I don't think anybody that was sitting in the press box that night agreed with it. Certainly, social media didn't necessarily agree with it. I mean, there was people calling for Arch at certain points, but I think the general consensus was kind of like, "What are you doing?" And after the game, Sark kind of explained it. He said, "Okay, we were giving Quinn an opportunity to kind of regather himself over those last two series of the second half or of the first half, and we were going to trot him out in the second half. He was going to go as normal. We just wanted him to kind of level himself out because he was a little bit rattled. He was or uneasy, as Sark put it. And I think really at the end of the day, that did help. I don't know if it was because it kind of lit a fire under Quinn's ass, or if it sort of allowed him to regain his composure a little bit. But I don't think that there's anything going forward that indicates that there's going to be any sort of change whatsoever. Sark said after the games, Quinn's our starter. Sark said today on Monday, Quinn's our starter, and I think everybody is very confident in Quinn. I don't think anything's changed in that regard. It's just optic wise, it was kind of a bad look at the time. And I can see why that would be the case because, all year it's been this is Quinn's team, this is Quinn's team. We ride or die with Quinn, and then you go to another guy, and in a lot of locker rooms that can probably cause some issues. But here I just don't see it as being an issue. I still think Quinn's the leader of the team. He didn't show up for media availability today for the first time playing in a game this season, and that was a little strange. But I think that I don't think that that's indicative of what happened on Saturday night either. I think they just kind of like, what, you practice today. We're going to get all these questions. It doesn't really matter. We don't care. Let's just hold him back today. And he'll be there Saturday, after the game, talking to the media after they play Vanderbilt. Everybody will have forgotten about this by that point.
How do you think getting a chance in a massive game like that helps Manning in years to come?
Well, I think that this game in particular probably taught him more than any of the other games that he's had combined because this is the first time that he's played a game where he's like, oh, wow, this is what the SEC looks like. So he can kind of take the experience from those two drives and kind of be like, okay, I got to do this here. I got to do this. I got to be quicker here. I got to get through my reads faster there, blah, 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 blah. And I do think it will help him. I don't think it's going to shake his confidence at all. He's a very smart kid. He's ready for this. But at the end of the day, those two series kind of opened his eyes a little bit. And he's like, okay, I'm a big time recruit, and this is the first time I've seen anything like this in my life. So I'm going to learn from it and take it forward.
So obviously it was a tale of two halves. And while it wasn't perfect in the second half, Texas looked like a different team, and I mean they were ready to play, and they looked so much better in the second half. Yes, you didn't win, and I'm not a fan of moral victories, but the biggest thing for me is you saw how Texas, they got punched in the mouth and they didn't give up. They came back out. Ewers looked a lot better. The whole offense looked better. Can you speak to what that teaches a team like Texas? Yes, we still lost. No, that's not what we wanted. But hey, we came out fighting the second half.
Yeah, I think that it kind of shows that they have what Sark called a heart of a champion. You know, they're not going to back down after getting hit in the mouth. It goes back to the boxing analogy he had last week too. It's a lot of teams fold in that moment, and it really is a testament to the culture of the program and the confidence that they have that they can come out and make it a one-score game in the next 15 minutes in the third quarter and go into the fourth quarter with a legitimate chance to win that game. And they had plenty of opportunities after that to win the game. I think at the end of the day, the defense just got kind of worn down because they were on the field too much, and that's why they weren't able to finish the job at the end. But I can tell you this: they want Georgia again because they want to prove that that's not the team that they are. They know that they're one of the best teams in the country, and that they can compete with teams like Georgia. And you know, when your defense, yeah, the defense gave up 30 points, which on paper looks like a lot, but when the other team is starting in your territory at, you know, the 47, 45, 47 yard line on average on for the whole game, to give up less than 300 yards of offense and to keep a lot of those opportunities away from Georgia and turn them over 3 times and give your offense the opportunity to get you back in the game, that in itself proves that they are 100% not backing down from anyone. So I don't think it matters who they face for the rest of the season. If they get down again, I think that they're going to continue to step up and fight and put themselves in position to win games. So I would not be concerned if I'm a Texas fan that, you know, they're not up to par, that they're not a college football playoff team, that they can't compete for an SEC championship, because the second half, just the last 30 minutes of that game showed me that they can do just that. They just need to learn to finish the job, start faster, and play a complete game against a team like Georgia, which nobody else but Alabama has figured out how to do over the last, you know, 5-7 years. So I'm pretty confident that they're going to be fine in that area.
So looking forward, Texas has a tough but very doable schedule. If you could fix one issue immediately, what would it be and why?
I would probably have to say the running game. And I know that against Oklahoma, they looked great on the ground. And I know that they have had their moments on the ground in past games, but and I don't mean just the running backs either. I mean the run blocking, because that is what this offense kind of hangs its hat on at the end of the day. That's what they're the most comfortable doing in terms of, okay, we need 4 or 5 yards here. Let's just hand it off, and our offensive line will maul them, and we'll get those yards that we need. You know, if they can't do that against a big time opponent like Georgia, they're going to have a hard time. I think that they can do that, but you just kind of have to go back to the drawing board and see, like, okay, where do we make the mistakes here? Where do we make the mistakes there? How do we open up this hole a little bit bigger? Whatever the case. I mean, I'm not a big X's and O's guy, so I don't know okay, he gets this gap, he gets that gap kind of, you know, jargon there, but it's sort of the staple of how you win in this league. So they need to figure that out pretty quick. And I would also say, you know, Quinn needs to get his confidence back. He did play better in the second half last week, but there was still a lot of plays that were kind of left, you know, on the field. Like he underthrew a few balls. He made a few. He was hesitant on a few plays and made a couple of questionable decisions here and there. He held on the ball a little bit too long a couple times, and I think that needs to get ironed out.
Do you think it's him just being rusty, the fact that he hadn't played consistently in almost a month, or do you think maybe it's mental
I think it's more the rust factor, to be honest. I've seen him play very well in big games, so I know that he can do it. I've seen him play in tough environments. I know he can do it. He knows he can do it. I think he just, like I said earlier, Georgia played a fantastic defensive game and really got after him, and that kind of threw him off. And I don't think that they're going to face another team that is going to be able to do those kinds of things this season. I don't care who else they play. They're not going to face a team with the talent on the defensive side like Georgia. Now, the only game that worries me going forward in terms of composure would probably be the Texas A&M game, because that's going to be the most insane college football environment anybody's seen in a decade. So I'm interested to see how he handles that. But in terms of Quinn himself, I really think that he's going to take this game, absorb it, move forward. He's going to be the best version of Quinn that we've seen over the next 4 or 5 games.
If you're Coach Sarkisian, what is your message to your team moving forward?
Keep fighting. Use this as a learning experience. This was their welcome to the SEC moment. It was bound to happen. They ran into a really good team who had their backs against the wall, and a really experienced team that knows how to win big games. And they took a punch in the mouth, but they got back up and they kept fighting. And that's what he tried to preach after the game, was that he was very proud of the way that they responded. And now it's just, okay, take those lessons, learn from your mistakes, execute better, and you still have a chance to do everything that you set out to do at the beginning of the season. One loss does not define a team. One loss does not end your season with a 12-team playoff. They could lose another game, whether it's Texas A&M or in the SEC championship or whatever, or it doesn't matter who else they lose to. If they get there and they're 10-2 as opposed to 11-1, they still have a very good chance to do whatever they need to do. But every game from here on out needs to be, like Sark said today, is the SEC championship. Every game is the SEC championship from here on out. You do not want to put yourself in a position where it's a question if you get in. You go out and you dominate. And they're certainly capable of doing that. We saw it through the first 6 weeks. So if they can do that the last few weeks, then they'll be in great shape, and I think they will.
So next up, Texas will head to Nashville to face the 25th ranked Vanderbilt Commodores, who have kind of been the shocker SEC team of the season. What do you need to see from Texas so that they can get out of Nashville with a win?
I mean, it's very wild to see Vanderbilt as a ranked team with a win over Alabama. It's certainly a scarier game than it was at the beginning of the season on the schedule. But I think they just need to go out and play their game. If they can go out and play their game and they can execute and they can perform at the level that they're expecting themselves to perform at, then they will win that game. Vanderbilt's been hanging their hat on controlling the ball and controlling time of possession and being physical. Texas is built to defend that. They did it against Georgia. They've done it against everybody. Vanderbilt's not going to be the team that airs it out against them 50 times and puts pressure on the secondary. They'll take their shots, but they're not going to be the team that is going to stretch you out and, try and beat you deep. If you can stop their run game and you can make their quarterback uncomfortable and make him beat you with his arm, they have a fantastic chance to win that game. Texas is physical enough up front. They're fast enough on the edges, getting to the quarterback at linebacker, running sideline to sideline to keep Vanderbilt contained. And I think that they're going to be able to do that. And I do think that the 18-point spread coming off of a double-digit loss is probably a little big, but I do think that they're going to be in pretty good shape.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Matt.